So we really don't talk about cults in today's society. In 2022, we don't really talk about it anymore. It's almost as if we think that the threat of cults is over with. It's not real anymore. The David Koreshes are gone. The uh, Jonestown is gone. You know what I mean? There's no more Jim Jones. There's no more Charlie Manson. You know what I'm saying? There's no more Applewhite. You know what I'm saying? There's no more Applewhite, Mr. Applewhite. You know what I'm saying? We think that those days are over with. But I'm here to tell you that we have cults among us right now. They never have gone away. We just think as a society that we have grown too smart to not be able to recognize them. We know what they look like. We know what they sound like. They sound like these guys, then it's a cult. But I'm here to tell you, as a cult survivor, they're not always recognizable. So I happened upon this article talking about five signs of a cult that's masked as a church. Okay, so I'm going to share that with you guys. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of reading here. It's very important. Right here it says cults may appear wonderful on the outside, but on the inside are very manipulating. Cult leaders are desperate to trick you into joining. Very important. They are after your obedience, your time, and your money. Cults use sophisticated mind control and recruitment techniques that have been refined over time. I'm going to be sharing a lot of this type of material with you in the upcoming year. So be on the lookout for that. Many people think that they can't be deceived by a cult, but that's far from the case. Beware of thinking that you are immune from cult involvement. Cults have millions of members around the world who once thought they were immune and still don't know they're even in a cult because they've masqueraded so well. To spot a cult, you need to know how they work and you need to understand the techniques they use. They will use these secrets and techniques to trick and control you. And it's imperative that you are able to spot them. That's what I'm here for, to give you the information that you need to know what a cult looks like. It says, once you understand how cults work, you would better be able to identify them, avoid recruiter, and protect family and friends. Here are 5 warnings of a cult masked as a church. And the first one is, what do you think it is? The pastor or leader is always right. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you've probably run into this person several times and you didn't even realize it. You're having a discussion with them, they're always right. Never wrong. What they say is king. No, I'm right about this. No, you're wrong. And never, never, ever, ever, ever wrong. That's a problem. That's a problem. If the pastor or leader is making himself or herself right, this may be a sign of cult involvement. There is a no tolerance for questions or critical injury. This is the reason. This is one of the manipulation techniques. He can't be wrong or she can't be wrong because that's part of the manipulation to get you to buy into what this person says. Okay. If you disagree with a church leader, then you are told it is your issue because you have to learn to submit to imperfect authority. Interesting, right? Whenever you bring up a legitimate biblical issue to leadership, they find a way to turn it around on you. You're the one with the problem. You just don't have understanding. You just don't get how this works, right? And point out that you are not only wounded, but you also have no right to question them. Hmm. No one is always right, including pastors. And I just want to say that right there. I let's talk about that for a second. If you're in an environment, if you're in a place where a pastor thinks he's always right, then there's a problem because nobody is always right. I just want to bring that up because we are in an era where we worship our pastors, okay? And we worship our leaders, okay? And we shouldn't. Should we put them on should we esteem our leaders? Yes. We should esteem them. But understand that they are not perfect. They are not infallible. And it's okay to question them, right? Okay, so let's get back to this. A pastor's responsibility isn't to interpret the Bible. Listen to this very closely. I want you to listen to this very closely. It's not to interpret the Bible. Their job is to preach the gospel. It's not based upon what they think. Listen, that's important. It's based on what God says. If your pastor or leader is unwilling to acknowledge or admit their mistakes or doesn't accept an obvious mistake that they have, that should be a major red flag. Also, if there's a problem in the church, your pastor should be approachable. If a pastor is not approachable and not open to constructive criticisms or concerns, then his or her heart is not in the right place. Look here. Look here. Somebody who's not willing to take criticism, there's a problem there. And back to the point about their job not being to interpret the scripture. This is where I always go back to trust, but verify. Trust your pastor, but verify what he says. In the Bible, when the apostles were going throughout preaching the gospel in the book of Acts, there's a group of people called the Bereans, and the Bereans followed them around to make sure that what they were saying was lined up with what they had at the time, which was the Pentateuch, the first five books of the Bible. They were verifying that what they were saying was lining up with the scriptures. You and I should be doing the same thing. You can't yes and amen everybody who says, I'm a preacher, I'm a pastor, I'm a bishop, I'm an apostle. Don't get caught up in this authority thing because he says I'm this and I'm that, or get caught up in his charisma that you leave your senses. I just wanted to point that out. So the next point here is deception. Deception. Okay, and it says a cult needs to recruit and operate using deception. Why? Because if people knew their true practices and beliefs beforehand, then they would not join. I want to take a second here to point out what I call one of our modern day cults, and that is the Hebrew Israelites. And on this point, the recruiting point, I'm gonna point out something that they use. They use this thing called the 12 tribes chart. Okay, which is very deceptive because that thing has been debunked so many times. It's the chart that tells you who the true tribes of Israel are according to the Bible. Okay, and everybody that's there is not white. In this chart was developed sometime in the 70s or 80s as a deceptive tactic. If you go online, if you go on YouTube and do a search, just do a search on 12 tribes chart debunked. Look it up. And you'll see a video of an old man, old black man, talking about he was there. He was there at One West when they developed this chart. And he talks about how they knew the chart was deceptive, but they used it to recruit young black men into their organization. That's the type of tactics this is talking about, using deceptive tactics. Okay, you have to beware of that. Beware of deceptive tactics. That's all I wanted to say there. So, a cult needs to hide the truth from you, and until they think you are ready to accept it. A cult will also have a slick, well-rehearsed public relations front, which hides what the group is really like. Okay, the mission of the cult may look similar to a church. Listen to this. You will always hear they help the poor, they support each other in community, they emphasize peace. You always hear that, right? Or save the environment, whatever it is. They'll tell you how happy you will be in their group. Everyone in the cult appears to be happy and enthusiastic, mainly because they have been told to act happy and will get in trouble if they don't. Behind the scenes stuff, right? These things will be introduced to you slowly, one at a time, so you will not notice the gradual change until eventually you are practicing and believing things which at the start would have caused you to run a mile. So they string you out, right? They string you out. They string you out. You don't get the whole ball of wax up front. Okay. They string you out because, like the article says, if you knew the full truth up front, you'd run. Okay. So if you're feeling strung out, it's probably because you are. Okay. So let's move on to the next point. The next point in this article is exclusivism. Exclusivism. You know what exclusivism is, right? You know what's exclusivism. Can't nobody be saved unless they in our group. If you're not in our group, you're going to hell. Notice I said in the group, because we know there's exclusivity in Christ. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. But that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about the exclusivity of the message of this particular group. That's what it's talking about, okay? If you got a group that's claiming that everybody else is wrong and everybody else got it messed up, and nobody understands this the way we are, the only way you can get to heaven is to come through our group, then that's exclusivity, and that should be a red flag to you, okay? A normal religious organization would not have any trouble with you moving to another similar organization as long as you stayed in the same religion, because it is the belief system that matters, not membership in an organization. This is very important to point out. Okay, very important to point out. If you wanted to go to another church or you wanted to move to an organization, shouldn't be a problem. But for example, if a Christian, then you can move from church to another church and still be a Christian. However, cult leaders would tell you that you can only be saved or can only be successful in their organization alone. No other organization has the truth. All others have missed the mark. This is a classic mark of a traditional cult. If you look back in cult history, they all say the same thing. We are the one. We're the one, the chosen one. So it is not the belief system that decides your future, but it is the belief system in your membership with that particular group. The cult leaders will make you believe there is nowhere else you can go and still be saved. And if you ever leave the one true church, that you are going to hell. This is a fear-based control mechanism designed to keep you in the cult. And I told you guys I'm going to be doing more of this type of teaching in 2023, because I think it's very important for us to begin revisiting the history of cults and how they operate and the mind manipulation and what they look like today, because we still have cults among them, among us. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that it has been shown without a shadow of a doubt that the Hebrew Israelites and groups like in Israel United in Christ is a cult. They have all the signs of a classic cult. They just re-rolled it. They just redressed it. They just revisited and flipped some things backwards and forwards, shifted some stuff around to make them look and sound more palatable. But now they are outright attacking Christianity. How more cultish do you need to be? Let's move on. Let's move on here. Let's see. Let's move on. Let's go to the next point. Fear and intimidation. Fear and intimidation. Cult leadership is feared. To disagree with leadership is the same as disagreeing with God. Yes. And if you watch visuals, you'll see the intent of the cult when it comes to their leader. If they're portraying their leader that looks some kind of God or something, we got a problem, people. We got a problem. The cult leaders will claim to have direct authority from God to control almost all aspects of your life. If the cult is not a religious group, then questioning the leaders or program will still be seen as a sign of rebellion and stupidity. Guilt is a tactic they will use to control you. Maybe the reason is you're not making money is because you're not with the program. And this goes into a lot of theological teaching. Well, brother, maybe you're not blessed because you're not giving to the program. You're not giving your tithes. You're not giving your offerings. You know what I'm saying? That's what this is talking about. Maybe the reason you're not able to convert new recruits is because your heart is prideful or full of sin. They kick it back on you, right? It could never be that the program isn't working or the teachings are not working or these new recruits have valid reasons for not joining. It's always your fault. You're always wrong, and you must try harder. It's all your fault. It's your fault that this happened. No accountability for leadership. That's the next point. This happens when leaders only allow those who agree with them into leadership positions. Listen, this is what I call this. I call this the yes man syndrome. Everything that dude say is like gold. Watch the people around him. If everybody's like this, if it's a bunch of bobbleheads going like this, them dudes just trying to get in on the good with the leader. Trust but verify. Trust but verify. That's all I'm saying. But in these cults, this is what's happening. This is what's happening in these cults. So it is biblical for a church to have elders in place, but they need to be mature elders, not puppets for the pastor or the leader. The elders are the buffer between the shepherd and the sheep. In other words, elders in a church are not yes men. They are there as a go-between between the leader and the people to wolf-proof the congregation. I'm going to say that again. Elders in the church are the go-between between the church leader and the people to wolf-proof them, to make sure that this leader is from God, that this leader is walking with the Lord, that this leader is teaching biblical teachings. That's what the job of an elder is. Not to just say, yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah, 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 he right. Yeah, yeah, he right again. Yeah, he right again, ain't he? Yeah. No, no. If he's wrong, he should be checked. A good elder will check his pastor and say, in respect, um, Pastor, I want to talk to you about this thing that you said. I don't think that lines up with what the scriptures say. Something like that. Not just accept everything that he says, because if that's the case, then he can do whatever he wants. So this is why these cult leaders need yes men around them, because they're going to be water carriers for his system. Okay, so let's get back to this. Okay, so in fact, elders are the basis for the New Testament church. As Paul planted churches, he appointed elders in every church. The Bible tells us Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Lord, in which they had to put their trust. Acts 14:23. It is imperative that your church has checks and balances. If your church leaders refuse to allow a mature elder board or council to be put in place, your church might be a cult. Listen, listen, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. The devil is a deceiver of many. He's always been a deceiver of many. Okay? And in 2022, 2023, he is among us. I want you to be aware of the tricks of the devil. And that is why I want you to be aware of these cults. Stand up, speak up, and do the work.